Wine?
Whiskey.
That's right. You said you never touched the stuff. I may have to see that you cultivate a taste for the finer things.
Jeff Chandler was born as Ira Grossel on December 15, 1918, in Brooklyn, New York, and would ultimately become a distinctive person whose influence could be felt in mid-century Hollywood. With his uniquely effective premature graying, tall stature, and deep and powerful baritone voice, Chandler was a leading man of the 1950s. His combination of physical presence and understated dramatic intensity could elevate him into compelling portrayals on screen. While his life was cut short in tragic circumstances, he created an everlasting legacy of memorable moments that will act as a fond memoir of the golden days of Hollywood. But what shaped the man behind the silver screen persona? Before the fame, before the heartbreak, what early forces forged Jeff Chandler into the Hollywood icon he would one day become? Early life and background. Born into a disadvantaged working-class Jewish family during the Great Depression, Jeff Chandler's early life was economically destitute. Despite such disadvantageous beginnings, he exhibited a natural proclivity toward creative endeavors from an early age. His ethnic background and socioeconomic status would later shape his style of acting and commitment to combat ethnic stereotyping in Hollywood depictions. Jeff Chandler completed his secondary education at Erasmus Hall High School in New York, and thereafter, he studied acting at the Fagan School of Dramatic Art in New York City. This experience was tremendously important to his preparation for future success, because he was able to balance the academic requirements of the educational journey with the behind-the-scenes growth as an actor. His devotion to the task of refining and developing his craft often put him in a position to work daily on stock theater productions and in radio dramas, which allowed him to refine the craft and put a solid foundation in place for what was to become an exceptional career in the entertainment business. Chandler served honorably in World War II with the United States Army while stationed in the Aleutian Islands. Military service was a major influence on Chandler, teaching him discipline and commitment to fighting for excellence without compromise. Many of these traits, formed in the military, would remain constants in both his personal philosophy and professional code of conduct. But once the uniform came off and the cameras began to roll, could discipline alone carry him into stardom? Or would Hollywood demand something even more rare, a presence that could not be ignored? Professional advancement and breakthrough. After the war, Chandler transitioned successfully to radio broadcasting and was quickly able to take advantage of an audience base he fueled with his unique vocal abilities. Probably one of his top identifying characteristics was his commanding baritone voice, which helped open doors in film. He started off as an anonymous figure playing smaller roles, working on larger roles in projects produced by big studio companies. He was continually advancing as an actor. It was in 1948 that he made a huge breakthrough in his acting career with the release of the film titled Johnny O'Clock, in which he enacted the role of a tough-riding gangster character. The character was a turning point in his movie career. However, his superb acting as Cochise, the Apache chief, in the critically acclaimed movie Broken Arrow, which was released in 1950, catapulted him to stardom and established him as an overnight sensation in Hollywood. His performances as this legendary hero reached the hearts of the audience and the critics, too, earning him a nomination as Best Supporting Actor at the Academy Awards. Being nominated for such a highly prestigious award for this legendary role was a grand honor, especially when considering the racial politics that were hard to traverse in the times in which he lived and worked. Chandler's audaciously humanistic and beautifully rendered depiction of the famous Cochise represented a watershed moment for the whole Hollywood community in terms of how Native American characters were treated. His intense depiction and complex portrayal introduced life to ancient forms and hired killers, with more complexity than has ever been pervasive. They were fundamentally stereotypes that had often been attached to them, and now there was a different standard of cultural representation in film, which was a better way to express their stories. This impressive feat of acting stood as a powerful tribute not only to his impressive range as a performer, but also to his deep compassion for significant social justice issues. With the phenomenal success that Broken Arrow achieved, Chandler became Hollywood's top leading man, with a secure position at the industry's peak. He exhibited an unmatched level of versatility with a colossal range of genres, going on to prove himself as a fine actor with many films ranging from adventure dramas like Smuggler's Island in 1951 to war dramas like Merrill's Marauders in 1958, and classic westerns like The Jayhawkers, which came out in 1959. His ability to hold screen space with some of the most sought-after actresses of the day, including such big names as Jane Russell, Rhonda Fleming, and Maureen O'Hara, also reinforced his status as a leading man in the highly competitive movie landscape. Aside from his amazing talent for acting, Chandler was also capable of showcasing amazing musical talent of note and caliber. Throughout the 1950s, he attempted the ambitious task of coming out with a string of various albums featuring beautiful ballads and classic romantic standards, which later served to cement and establish his smooth and enchanting baritone singing voice. Songs like All I Do Is Dream of You and I Should Care offered up a soft and sensitive interpretation that created an interestingly contrasting effect when pitted against the rough and rugged character types that he typically portrayed in films. Although his musical career lacked any close fear of going through the same celebrity rise as his acting career, it served to complete his overall artistic presence and the extensive depth of his creativity. Chandler differed from his generation in the fact that he had an immediate link to production and storytelling beyond acting. He had his own independent production, wanting a greater stake in the artistic integrity of his films. This was not typical behavior for actors in that era, and it pointed to his desire not just to be famous, but to shape how stories unfolded in film. This entrepreneurship approach also demonstrated his desire to influence the film world for additional reasons. Chandler gained much of his fame during his lifetime for his unique ability to play characters that contained equal dynamic proportions of toughness as well as vulnerability. His acting skills also helped bring depth to those performances, which, without the actor's influence, could have eerily been described as simply one-dimensional characters. In creating characters who were stoic, yet emotionally complex, he created fully dimensional characters that offered meaningful complexity for viewers. This notion of fully immersing himself in character development, along with his innovative casting work in Native American roles, in combination with his fresh and innovative representation of the entertainment business, ultimately represents his unparalleled stamp on Hollywood's golden age, whose place in history will not be determined by its creator's time upon Earth, long after he is lost to history. Chandler's life in marriage. Jeff Chandler, whose real name was Ira Grossel, embarked on the journey of marriage with the highly reputed actress Marjorie Hoschel in 1946, which coincided with the early stages of his extremely successful career as a Hollywood movie star. Before committing to this marriage, Hoschel had already gained much acclaim through her versatile and multifaceted performances in a long list of Hollywood films and theatrical productions, thus acquiring a reputable, albeit modest, status in the ever-changing world of entertainment. Their marriage was very successful and fruitful, and they were blessed with two beautiful daughters, Jaime Tucker, their eldest, who was born in the year 1947, and was followed by Dana Grossel, born 2 years later in 1949. Interestingly enough, it must be pointed out that Dana would later choose to follow in her father's footsteps by adopting his birth name for herself, reflecting a profound sense of pride in her heritage. The family then made the great move into a comfortable house in the booming city of Los Angeles, where Chandler, as a father, would first show his remarkable capacity to juggle the demands of his growing fame with, at the same time, keeping up with his duty and obligations as a good and doting parent. Beneath the supposedly idyllic and picturesque surface of their seemingly perfect Hollywood union, there was marital tension simmering that was far from evident to a casual observer. The couple's first significant issue arose in the year 1951, which ultimately led them to part ways. In spite of their efforts to get back together and revive their relationship, underlying issues at the very foundation of their marriage went unresolved and unchecked. Other than this, they also faced a separation in the year 1954, which ultimately prompted Grossel to file for divorce. In her complaint against the dissolution of their marriage, she also stated that an irreparable breakdown had occurred, citing Chandler's chronic and persistent exhaustion as one of the predominant reasons for their marital problems. From the testimony that she provided, it was apparent that his level of fatigue had significantly worsened to the extent of making him faint on various social occasions and public outings. This negative turn of events rendered him virtually non-existent in spirit and involvement, despite being physically present in such settings. The grueling demands of Chandler's career as an actor, including long shooting schedules and heavy studio obligations, obviously left devastating physical and domestic effects on both of them. In spite of such strong barriers, the couple made one last attempt at reconciliation in March 1955. At this time, Chandler was still one of the highest-grossing stars at Universal Studios. Their reconciliation, which they had hoped would be forever, later turned out to be merely short-lived. In 1957, while occupied with filming the motion picture Raw Wind in Eden, amidst the picturesque landscape of Italy, Chandler became involved in a highly publicized and scandalous love affair with none other than Esther Williams. Esther was not just any ordinary actress. She was a well-known Hollywood actress who had dazzled people on screen with her acting, as well as an immensely successful competitive swimmer who had made a name for herself within the world of swimming in her own right. When news of this love affair achieved headline status in the newspapers, it soon came to the attention of many. Grossel, after learning this news and coming to the realization that their marriage had irreparably reached its final breaking point, decided to file for divorce towards the end of that very same year. This particular action ultimately brought to a close more than a decade of marriage, which had been characterized by a series of repeated reconciliations throughout. As time went on, the relationship was slowly worn away by the cumulative tensions arising from both Chandler's career undertakings and personal life, which all led to this final choice. The divorce action in 1958 made public what had not been known before about Chandler's wealth. Under contract to Universal Studios to produce 2 movies annually, he was paid substantial sums, $60,000 a picture in 1957, rising to $75,000 a picture in 1958. His 1957 compensation totaled $250,000, supplemented by income from singing appearances and endorsement contracts he may have had. However, his fortune declined significantly because of the high professional fees he had paid over the years. Indeed, his management team alone accounted for about 25% of his overall earnings. Then there were other significant expenses in terms of maintaining his lifestyle, satisfying family commitments, and dealing with the persistent demands for professional preservation. At first, the court ordered Chandler to pay $1,500 monthly as temporary spousal support to tide his former wife over the separation period. However, when the settlement came about in June 1959, the terms agreed upon were far better and more favorable. Chandler agreed to pay the amount of $2,166 monthly in the form of alimony, besides providing an extra $500 monthly as child support. This financial arrangement was done with the aim of giving his ex-wife and daughters some form of economic stability and security, and helping them maintain their well-being. Besides this, Chandler provided a handsome sum of $100,000 in cash, which was fair and proportionate to the length of their marriage and also to his continuing success and good fortune in professional life. But behind the generous figures and court-approved stability, what silent sacrifices were being made at home? And at what point does professional devotion quietly begin to dismantle the very family it was meant to support? Reflection on his marriage. Jeff Chandler's marriage broke down amid the increasing professional pressures that actually transformed his personal relationships as well. As Grossel reflected on the end of their marriage, she illustrated that Chandler's expectations of working grew hungrier, to the extent that even his planned time off from the set got filled with work commitments. Rather than devoting his free time, which he had at his disposal, to relaxation or leisure, he chose to invest those precious hours in doing work and solving various issues that arose in his business. He became so absorbed in this work that, in a sense, he became inaccessible not only physically, but also emotionally to the other members of his family. This developing tension and strain between him and the rest of his family became concrete and real enough as Grossel began to develop an ulcer, a physical and tangible experience of the long marital tension that they all had endured over the years. After their breakup, Chandler's personal life continued to be a fascination for the public and the media. He was drawing a rather large crowd due to his dating several high-profile actresses and performers, including Gloria DeHaven, who was a highly talented actress and an equally talented, gorgeous, and charming singer. Though their affair was carried on with some discretion at first, it was later in the crosshairs of Confidential magazine, a sleazy tabloid magazine that thrived on scandal. In the ongoing court case, in which the individual known as Confidential is a party, the testimony of private investigator Fred Otak resulted in the following telling piece of information being revealed. Indeed, the detectives had been following both Chandler and DeHaven in an effort to obtain concrete evidence of their clandestine affair. This action speaks to the shady and often unethical nature of tabloid reporting and the broader issue of invasion of privacy that so frequently occurs for celebrities under the glare of public scrutiny. One of the most sensational and scandalous episodes in the life of the renowned figure Chandler came to light decades later, to be precise in 1999, when the veteran actress and author Esther Williams decided to share her life story by penning down her autobiography under the title The $1 Million Mermaid. In the contents of this autobiography that riveted the attention of the masses, there was a particularly lurid and eye-opening fact regarding her relationship with Chandler. In her uncompromising narrative, she stated that he had presented himself as a cross-dresser, a bombshell piece of information that came immediately after the part where he had proposed to her while displaying an engagement ring. The startling revelation has, once again, brought the focus of public interest back to the intricacies of Chandler's personal life, even many years after he is gone. As quoted in a detailed report published by the Los Angeles Times, it was said that the majority of Chandler's colleagues and acquaintances denied and dismissed the allegations brought forth by Williams vocally and with vehemence. Jane Russell, also a friend of Chandler's, gave an equally strong and emotional defense in response to the accusation, saying emphatically, "I've never heard of such a thing. Cross-dressing is the last thing I would expect of Jeff. He was a sweet guy. Definitely all man." Following Russell's statement, the remainder of the entertainment industry was quick to follow her lead, adopting the view that Williams's accusation was misunderstood or even possibly exaggerated into something more than what really took place. This sense of cynicism is especially justified when one considers the long-standing screen persona that Chandler has cultivated over the years as a classic masculine figure in the world of film. His deep, baritone voice, along with the stereotypical male roles he habitually played, created an image that was far removed from the grave accusations being made against him, which appeared especially out of place and jarring not only to the masses, but also among his peers and fellow professionals within the entertainment community. Aside from his complicated dalliance with both Williams and DeHaven, it is interesting to know that Chandler was also romantically linked to the actress Ann Sheridan, who herself was another popular Hollywood star, well-loved and respected for her talent and contributions to film. As his relationship continued to be informally verified, it served to further cement Chandler's increasingly high profile as not just a handsome on-screen leading man, but also as a highly sought-after off-screen partner. Despite these personal struggles and complications of his love life, Chandler was able to maintain a steady and stable career as an actor, frequently turning up as tough, honorable, and heroic characters in a diverse assortment of films and television programs. However, the continual soap opera that was his personal life, a succession of doomed marriages, multiple affairs, constant scandal, and widespread press coverage, and a whole host of unfounded rumors, worked to build a far more detailed and multidimensional portrait of the man who worked behind the lens. His seemingly single-dimensional devotion to his craft routinely seemed to come at a tremendous personal expense, as those individuals closest to him were continually left feeling ignored or bogged down by his tireless and single-minded drive for his professional life, as well as his intense need to maintain his carefully built public image. As the spotlight kept him shining on screen, what shadows were quietly gathering behind the curtain, waiting for the moment they would consume everything? Was Jeff Chandler's final act scripted by fate, or by something far more disturbing? The mystery. Jeff Chandler, a great and gifted actor whose illustrious and storied career significantly added to the glamour and prestige of Hollywood's golden era, very much represented the quintessential leading man prototype of the 1950s. His signature silver hair, which glistened under studio lights, coupled with his deep, resonant baritone voice that captivated audiences nationwide, earned him a high profile as one of the film's most interesting and enduring actors of the period. With his unforgettable and powerful performances in iconic films like Broken Arrow, Merrill's Marauders, and Sign of the Pagan, Chandler had solidly cemented his leading role among Hollywood's top stars, ensuring his place in movie history. But behind the carefully cultivated image that he showed the world, there existed a set of mysterious and intriguing events that revolved around the sudden and unexpected manner of his death. These events would continue to fascinate and intrigue his devoted fans for years to come. Recent events have at last put to rest decades of rumor and secretive whispers that had continued behind closed doors. The truth, which has now emerged into the open after recently published evidence and testimony, is a stark and jarring contrast to the mythic figure long revered by his eager fan base. In 1961, at the tragically young age of just 42, Chandler's life was suddenly cut short after what should have been a simple and routine surgical procedure to correct a slipped disc. In light of the official medical record explaining the tragic death as a consequence of complications arising during surgery, citing specifically an infection of the blood and medical negligence as the etiologic factors, there were several elements pertaining to his hospital stay that instantly provoked red flags and grave concern. This fueled a wave of doubts on the part of his friends, colleagues, and even his ex-wife, all of whom were questioning how one who seemed to be in fairly decent health when entering the surgery could so rapidly and severely decline while under care at a reputable and long-standing medical facility. Within almost the instant of his death, a storm of disturbing rumors started spreading about possible botched procedures, ignored allergies, and a frightening level of negligence on the part of the hospital workers. At the center of this maelstrom was none other than Cedars of Lebanon Hospital in Los Angeles, where Chandler had been taken for treatment but never discharged. The enigma of what happened in his case was further compounded by the fact that there were contradictory reports. Some sources stated that there had been a misdiagnosis, while others pointed to what seemed like an utter mishandling of dangerous allergic reactions to anesthesia and antibiotics. In a remarkable and surprising disclosure, a nurse is said to have informed Chandler's close friend, the renowned entertainer Sammy Davis Jr., by explaining that chaos and mayhem erupted in the operating room when Chandler suddenly began to experience distressing seizures as well as severe anaphylactic reactions, which created a critical situation. Recently released court documents, along with other hospital records, have unveiled a shocking and disturbing truth regarding the medical treatment Chandler received. He was prescribed medicine that he was well documented to be allergic to, specifically a penicillin derivative. This potentially fatal and life-threatening error, coupled with a lack of proper and close monitoring post-operation, led to his speedy and unfortunate decline in health. Rather than taking responsibility for this grave mistake, the hospital is reported to have been accused of trying to conceal this mistake in order to shield itself, driven by concerns over potential legal backlash and the consequences that would most likely ensue publicly. Things continued to get worse as a thick veil of secrecy descended on the problem, making matters even more complex. Over the next few years, industry insiders began to suspect that there was a deliberate and concerted effort being made by the studio system to muzzle any negative news that could potentially emerge. Universal Pictures had invested enormous sums of financial capital and resources that were heavily dependent on Chandler's public image and persona. He was one of their most bankable and commercially successful stars, and he was also one of the very few leading men at the top who possessed the remarkable gift of being able to convincingly play heroic roles in a wide variety of genres, including westerns, war films, and big historical epics. The adverse publicity that arose from medical negligence and a breakdown within the institution not only jeopardized Chandler's enduring legacy seriously, but also suggested potential far-reaching repercussions that would impact the cherished reputation of Hollywood's golden era. Jeff Chandler's private life became increasingly complex and volatile due to the mounting tension and endless rumors regarding his romantic life. The strain put on his marriage, along with the wild conjectures concerning supposed affairs outside of wedlock, contributed significantly to the already tangled situation of his carefully crafted public image. Years after the tragic event of his passing, his former wife, Marjorie Hosel, offered candid and straightforward responses during various media interviews, implying that there existed a much greater level of complexity surrounding Chandler's untimely death than what had originally been communicated to the public at large. She particularly pointed out that the profound mental distress coupled with physical exhaustion may have played a crucial role in weakening his overall health and resilience in a manner that was significant and impactful. Those close to Chandler were the ones who witnessed him pushing himself to the limit, with a non-stop and relentless rate of movie shoots and public appearances, while struggling with a chronic and unrelenting condition. Having all these various stresses compounded, along with an absence of proper medical attention and care, cultivated what would prove to be a deadly and dangerous mix. In the not-too-distant past, a considerable amount of new information and light has been cast upon these occurrences, particularly with the expansion of digital records and the new wave of interest from researchers aimed specifically at the life and work of Chandler. Therefore, researchers and film historians have been able to connect fragments of information that were once incompatible with one another to create a line of exciting and substantial discoveries that have enriched our understanding of this subject. Investigative journalists, through their diligence and persistence in ferreting out the truth, discovered a set of medical documents that were previously concluded as lost forever, as they had been irretrievably destroyed. Together with these significant documents, they also uncovered tearful letters written by Chandler's dearest and closest friends and family members. These letters poignantly articulated their indignation and profound sense of sorrow at what they all uniformly called an utterly preventable tragedy that need never have occurred. Anything other than offering support for the hypothesis that a tragic accident had occurred, the evidence presented painted a deeply chilling and disturbing picture of institutional laziness. Furthermore, it suggested the possibility of a deliberate cover-up, one that seemed to have been carefully orchestrated to protect reputations while simultaneously aiming to minimize legal liability. A milestone and record-breaking triumph came with the unwavering and unrelenting dedication shown by Chandler's daughter, Jamie Tucker. She spent years devoting a large portion of her time seeking access to her father's sealed and confidential medical files. In an emotionally poignant interview, she spoke of the constricting and overwhelming agony she experienced being in limbo, with no complete understanding of what was happening leading up to the death of her father. Her moving and eloquent testimony powerfully captured the human and personal aspects of the tragedy that had occurred. "He wasn't a star. He was my dad," she reminded herself, speaking of her grief over her loss, and he did not deserve to die like that, under no circumstances. Her tireless and unyielding dedication eventually bore fruit when a court order compelled the hospital to release long-sealed records that had previously been hidden from view. Those records ultimately confirmed that basic medical procedures had been ignored and that Chandler's well-documented allergies had, in fact, been recorded before the surgery was performed. With the enigma now fully exposed to public scrutiny, the harsh reality casts a sobering and weighty shadow over the tinsel sheen that once characterized the glitz and glamour of classic Hollywood. The tragic tale of Jeff Chandler's untimely passing represents much more than just a case of celebrity tragedy. It serves as a gripping and poignant affirmation of the undeniable fact that even the brightest and most celebrated stars within the vast entertainment cosmos can tragically become victims of negligence, enduring silence, and systemic failure that often goes unaddressed. As audiences today sit back to reflect on the films he has performed in, they realize that most individuals today are now in a better position to fully appreciate his performances and work with a much better degree of knowledge regarding the man behind the character that he came to depict. Secondly, it is only natural that they must wonder and speculate how many more tragedies may be yet concealed and quietly secreted away in the long and troubled history of Hollywood. We have now come to the end of today's video. If you find this video interesting, feel free to share your thoughts on the video in the comment section below. See you in the next video. Ciao.